In a region haunted by generations of conflict and diplomacy gone cold, the Middle East once again finds itself on a knife's edge. The tempo of hostilities between Israel and Iran has reached a new pitch, and the world watches anxiously as events unfold with unnerving speed. Israeli fighter jets have launched a series of precision strikes in Syria and southern Lebanon, targeting what officials say are Iranian weapons depots and command posts linked to Hezbollah and other proxy militias. These aren't isolated incidents, they are part of a broader, calculated campaign to blunt Iranian influence before it reaches Israel's doorstep. In response, Tehran has activated its sprawling network of regional proxies, Shiite militias in Iraq, Houthi rebels in Yemen, and the ever-present Hezbollah in Lebanon, unleashing a flurry of drone and missile attacks not only at Israeli territory but at U.S. bases and Saudi infrastructure as well. The Iron Dome intercepts many, but not all, as civilians shelter under threat and the specter of a broader war looms. And then, adding fuel to the fire, former U.S. President Donald Trump made headlines with a provocative declaration, musing openly about the need for regime change in Iran. Though no longer in office, his words carry heavy weight, especially with his sights set on a possible return to the White House. In a charged political rally, Trump claimed that the Iranian regime poses an existential threat not just to Israel, but to global stability, suggesting that diplomacy had failed and that only forceful action would suffice. Iranian officials quickly seized on the statement, branding it yet another example of American imperialism and warning that such rhetoric only hardens their resolve. Trump's remarks, while politically aimed at energizing a conservative base, echoed globally, drawing condemnation from some allies and cautious silence from others. Within Iran, the hardliners found ammunition to tighten their grip, accusing reformists of naivety for trusting in negotiations. Inside Washington, President Biden's administration has tried to walk a diplomatic tightrope, urging calm while reaffirming America's long-standing alliance with Israel and its desire to avoid another war in the Middle East. So why is this happening now? Why this sharp escalation, after years of uneasy containment? For Israel, the timing is strategic and urgent. Prime Minister Netanyahu, facing a storm of political pressure at home, from judicial reforms to corruption allegations, has turned once again to security threats to unify his base and deflect criticism. A perceived threat from Iran, especially its nuclear ambitions and growing influence across Syria and Lebanon, presents both a real and politically useful enemy. For Iran, the motivations are equally layered. With a battered economy under intense sanctions, growing domestic dissent, and a fragile hold on power, the regime sees regional deterrence and proxy warfare as essential tools for survival. Supporting militias in neighboring countries allows Tehran to project power far beyond its borders and complicate any direct military response. This strategy, perfected over decades, gives Iran asymmetric leverage and plausible deniability. But as Israeli strikes intensify, the line between shadow warfare and open conflict is beginning to blur. Meanwhile, the possibility of a wider war hangs heavy. U.S. intelligence sources have raised alarm over Iranian attempts to transfer precision-guided missile systems to Hezbollah, weapons that could overwhelm Israeli defenses and turn any future conflict into a catastrophic urban war. In Yemen, the Houthi movement, armed and trained by Iran, has already resumed attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure, a signal that Tehran is willing to widen the battlefield if it feels cornered. Iraq remains volatile, its fragile government unable to fully rein in Iranian-backed militias who continue to harass American and coalition forces. Syria remains the chessboard of choice, where Iranian forces, Israeli air power, Russian influence, and Syrian regime survival intersect in a deadly balance. For the millions of civilians caught in the crossfire, the situation grows more desperate. In Gaza, in Beirut, in the refugee camps along the Syrian border, and even in Tehran's restive suburbs, people live with power outages, food shortages, and constant fear of escalation. The global economic implications are also severe. Oil prices have begun to spike amid speculation of a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, through which a third of the world's seaborne oil passes. If tensions spill further, markets could spiral, supply chains could fracture, and inflation could be reignited on a global scale. And amid all this, diplomacy hangs by a thread. The Iran nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, has effectively collapsed, with both sides blaming the other for its demise. Quiet backchannel negotiations in Oman and Switzerland have stalled. European powers, once hopeful of reviving diplomacy, now find themselves spectators in a drama increasingly defined by hardliners, military calculus, and nationalist fervor. For President Biden, options are limited. Escalating could drag the US into another endless conflict, while standing by risks alienating allies and emboldening adversaries. For Trump, this is a narrative playground, a chance to paint himself as strong, decisive, and unafraid of confrontation. Whether he means to act on those words, should he return to power, remains a chilling unknown. The Middle East has always been a theater where local disputes carry global consequences. But this moment feels particularly volatile. The lines are being redrawn, the alliances are shifting, and the rhetoric is sharpening into threats that cannot be easily walked back. In Jerusalem, Tehran, Washington, and Riyadh, decisions are being made that could determine whether this is a passing flare-up, or the prelude to a far greater conflict. One miscalculation, one missile too far, one provocation too bold, and the region could ignite in ways we haven't seen in years. And so the world watches, breath held, as history prepares to turn another dangerous page.